Record. Hey everyone, this is Randy from BibleBuyingGuide.com. Today I'm talking to Mark Ward. You might have heard of this guy. He's kind of a big deal. I discovered Mark several years ago on a video called Why Bible Typography Matters. And then from there, he left a comment on my website. So he discovered me through my website. And then later somehow found out that he develops websites using Divi. Well, I was one of the main Divi writers. So once I saw that, I just had to send a friend request. So we've been friends ever since. It's been a while. It's been a few years, but Mark has gone from doing some work with Logos and some other things like that, and so I just wanted to talk to him today. We tried to do this a few years ago, but I didn't have internet for a couple of years. uh, Not good enough to record. But anyway, that's enough of me talking. I want to hear from Mark. Introduce yourself to our audience and tell us what you're into.
Oh boy. Yeah, you and I have such an odd mixture of overlaps here.
Yep.
I, I I'll start with the one that maybe most of my own YouTube viewers wouldn't know about, and that is I have designed websites on the side for years and years. It's actually, as of this moment, coming toward the end of 2024. It's actually becoming not so much a side thing as a main thing. I'm trying to move into doing YouTube and web design full time. I've worked for Logos for 9 years. I worked for Crossway briefly. Before that, BJU Press. But I really love doing YouTube, as I know you have done, and I love serving churches with web design and hosting, which is, I'm sure, something that you've done. I was a graphic design major many years ago. Before I switched to Bible, I had a call to ministry. I have never regretted that call, but I've always felt, ever since I got married, especially, and started to have another mouth or three or four more mouths to feed than my own, that keeping up ministry through web design, which also brings in a little extra income, would be good. And now, again, I'm trying to go full time with it and YouTube. So the YouTube portion, like, where do I even start? My goodness, I'm just all the time wanting to talk about the Bible. I love Bible translation, and I saw that on the one hand, there was something negative out there that I had to push back against, and that is King James onlyism. I'm not against the King James version. I've got one right here. In fact, you sent me another copy of the King James that I used on my YouTube channel for years until I asked Thomas Nelson to send me this one. I thought it's kind of good to have a distinctive color for the King James. So this is my red King James, and Klaus Eric Krogh, that I know you know, did the type in here, and I wanted to have one of those. I wanted to push back against King James onlyism in as gracious a way as I could, but I also realized I wanted to push for something, and that is, the the practice of using multiple translations in my Bible study, because that's what I have been doing for many years and getting a lot of profit out of. So I'm trying to build the English speaking church's trust in our many good English Bible translations. I have a wife who is the proprietress of Blackburn Gardens, a micro-urban flower farm on our property. Three children, two teenagers and a non-teenager. And I serve in my church, Emmanuel Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, Washington, and as a Sunday school teacher, and uh, pretty soon Christmas choir director. Boy, and I love ultimate frisbee and choral music. There we go. That's me.
I have seen a few posts about choral music, so yeah, that's been interesting. Talking about Bible translations and the KJV, you are not anti KJV. And I've seen
No,
a lot of comments where people will say that you're saying don't use it, and you're not saying that at all. In
no.
fact, you do use it. We've had that conversation, and you have some, and that's why. But you've written a book about the use and misuse of the King James Bible, which I've read a couple of times, and I thought was a very well written book, and I appreciate and recommend that book. What other writings have you done along the line of translations?
I do have two books coming out. Um, One is called KJV Words You Don't Know, You Don't Know. It's with my editor right now, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be out on the market till 2026 now, I'm being told. That's also with Lexham Press, just like Authorized was. That book just goes through, my main concept is false friends, King James words you don't know, you don't know. And I give 38 examples in that book that book, as I prepare the market for it, more than a year before it comes out, we'll see. Maybe it would come out in 2025. But as I prepare the market for it, I'd want people to see this is a book that I actually want my King James only brothers and sisters to feel they can use. It never mentions a single critical text based Bible. The only other translations it ever mentions are the New King James and the Modern English Version, which are also based on the Textus Receptus, just like the King James is. Also, the big idea, and this is a controlling metaphor, so controlling that one of my good friends and reviewers got sick of it, is the metaphor. It's, you can give a man a fish and he'll eat for a night, but if you teach a man how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. I'm trying to teach people how to be fishers of false friends as they read the King James. I don't think it's enough either to just put, footnotes at the bottom of the page, as this Thomas Nelson King James does rather well, honestly. It defines a lot of archaic words. I was actually very impressed with it, but I don't think that's enough. I think that people need to have the cast of mind to notice when English changes in the English language are affecting their ability to understand the King James. And then they need the tools necessary to go and verify, okay, so what did this word mean in 1611? So through 38 examples of various kinds, grouped by kinds of language change that's involved, I teach people how to fish for false friends, that is, words they don't know because of language change in the King James. I've also got a book coming out, a print version of my KJV Parallel Bible that'll also be with Lexham Press. I'm really excited about that one. The intro and outro materials there are not fully written, but the substance of the book is what you see on the website and can get there for free. But to have it in a nice print format will be great, where I show all the differences between the main Textus Receptus edition and one of the main critical text editions, and I show them all in English, all the translatable differences. I think that's going to be a really great tool for a lot of people, and it's the one thing that I've had the most people ask for a print edition of. As for writings about translation, that's really it. I do write some on my blog, but I don't have any other books on the topic.
And you did do a lot of blogging, but now you've moved to video. Uh,
Yeah, I took the opportunity that COVID afforded to start a YouTube channel, and to me, it's a more natural way for me to get out to the public what used to go out through blog posts. I find there's a better connection that I have because I'm in a way face to face with people. Yeah, YouTube has been, I think, I hope, a very natural medium for me. I really love it.
can you tell us about your process in creating a video? Just run through that
Yeah,
just real quick.
I script every video, and I mean 99% of videos. There are just a couple that I've done off the cuff, and certainly interviews. I can't script those, but I do script my questions. And I've reflected on why do I do this? Honestly, positively and negatively. Positively, my major preaching mentor was just such an excellent preacher. He just never wasted your time with silliness and fluff. It was all substance, and I really appreciated that. I sat under his ministry for 18 years, from age 16 to 34, when I came here to Washington State. And then negatively, I have sat through a lot of sermons where I just felt like the guy didn't prepare. And I've even been in large Bible conference situations with thousands of people listening. And I listened to this sermon and I thought, especially as I got older and had seminary training myself, I thought either this guy is intimidated and just kind of scrambling, floundering, or he just didn't sit down and do the work. And I'm not going to do that to people. I'm going to script all my videos. So I do. And I'm actually looking at you right now through a large teleprompter that's in front of my Sony A7 IV, and you can't see it, of course, but beneath it is a little monitor that's actually built to go on top of a camera. It's like um, a cinema camera monitor, but I have it hooked into the teleprompter, and then that's hooked into my MacBook Pro, so I can send my scripts directly to it. And I will write the scripts out in advance. I'll go edit them, sometimes a couple times. And ever since I was a teenager, people would tell me, wow, you write like you speak. And so I thought, well, maybe I can speak like I write. Maybe I can use a teleprompter and not everybody will know. And that seems to be the case. Enough people ask me, how do you do your videos that it makes me think maybe I don't sound like I'm reading them, but I am reading pretty much every single one. I don't ad lib very much. Then I go through and I use an awesome tool called Descript now to do a rough cut edit through AI. It transcribes my speech and then uses that transcription to produce an edit. Takes out, removes retakes, and then takes out gaps, which is huge. And in Final Cut Pro, I then add slides and export, stick it on YouTube, and there we go.
Nice. That sounds like a better process than mine. I write. I'm a writer. I won't claim to be a speaker. I'll claim to be a writer. So I write articles and mostly Bible reviews. I'll do my Bible review and then I go from memory to my camera, which I have to move everything off my desk and set up my camera and turn on my lighting and set up everything. And then I get my Bible out and I start talking about it. And then I have to edit. The editing part is the hard part, but even the talking part, I'm going through it. It would be a lot better if I had a teleprompter. I'm going through the things and I'll look at it and I'll say, oh, I'm at the end of my video now, but I forgot to talk about paper. And I always like to talk about paper early. So I have to edit and pull that in. I've gotten to where I don't even do a lot of editing anymore. I just leave it there. I mean, I cut the blank parts, but if I talk about paper at the end, I'll just leave it. I don't care. As long as it flows, I'm fine with it. But yeah, teleprompter is huge. I've used a teleprompter before, and that is huge because you can look right at the camera and you can talk.
Right,
You can say what you've written, and you can write it in a way that you feel natural when you're saying it. I
right.
like that. I'm going to have to do that. I like that a lot. Um, so you've done a few reviews, not many, but I've seen a few Bible reviews. Do you have a
Yeah.
process that you like to follow for those?
Those are some of the few videos that I've typically done without scripting. And I really appreciate your work and that of Tim Wildsmith. You know, back in the day, J. Mark Bertrand, when he actually used to keep up his blog, he's a very gifted guy. I got to meet him at the Museum of the Bible in the last year or so. Really appreciate him. Um, I I just don't have the appetite for reviewing as many Bibles as you and Tim do, and as J. Mark Bertrand used to do. So it really has to be something special for me to spend time on it. And if that's the case, then I've already looked at all the key elements and I've got them in mind. And I'll just do the same thing you described. I'll just kind of go from memory and I haven't written out any article or anything. I just kind of talk about the elements. And to me, the physical elements, the leather and the paper are less important. Paper probably a little more important. I don't like ghosting any more than the next guy does. And line matching can be nice. Anything that helps reading, but my main interest is described by that video. I think you mentioned the very first video, really, on my channel, why Bible typography matters, that I made back in January of 2015 in a special Sunday school session at my large church in Greenville before I came out here to Washington State. And for years, it was effectively the only video on my channel before 2020. But I really care about typography. I care about the beauty of it, yes, a whole lot actually. I'm not very good, and I said that in my video, at laying out type. I'm never satisfied with what I do, but I'd like to think that I have some ability to judge the uh, skill of others. And I'm happy to say that doesn't mean I'm negative about others. It means I'm positive about a lot of them. And I can absolutely immediately tell the difference between a Bible that was laid out by people who knew what they were doing versus people who didn't. I'm overjoyed to say that the great majority of Bibles now pay more attention to typography than I feel they did, 10, 15, certainly 20 years ago. Klaus Eric Krog has been a big reason for that. The biggest thing for me, though, has got to be how is the text laid out on the page, and does that help readers of the Bible read well?
I agree
And
100%.
so
That's
I
one of
am
my
all
issues.
for, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
That's one of my issues with the way the KJV is laid on the page.
Yes,
To me, the KJV is the most poetic translation, but it has the least poetic layout. It looks like a dictionary. And
right,
that's something that J. Mark Bertrand has really, driven home. And I agree
right,
100%. It looks like a dictionary. And that
right,
chopping up the verses, we can use verse numbers. I get that. I prefer to have them than not. But I
right,
think that if we chop the text up according to verse numbers we added, we're adding an unnatural break. And we've
Right.
done it also with chapter breaks. We're adding
Yep.
unnatural breaks, and it stops the flow of thought. And I
Totally
would
agreed.
prefer to just have the flow work, have the
Right.
reading to be smooth, and
Yep.
not be able to take it out of context. Context is king. And
Right.
verse by verse allows you to do that. Now, not all verse by verse is bad. The one you have in your hand there is an excellent verse by verse uh,
Yeah. Yep.
layout. And the striding, an excellent design. So there are
Yeah.
lots of good designs with verse by verse. That's not necessarily the problem, but if it doesn't look like it goes together, then people are not going to think in their mind that
Right.
it goes together. And one thing the
Right.
KJV does, every verse starts with a capital letter. It makes it feel like a separate sentence, even though it's not.
Exactly. Right. Sometimes it's not even right. Yeah. I mean, frequently it's not even the beginning of a new sentence. And I especially find that to be difficult when I'm copying and pasting poetry on my computer from the King James. Yeah. If you're gonna have to have a verse by verse format, I mean, this would be the very best one. And what it does is it does collect all of the paragraphs, all the verses into paragraphs and gives a lot of headings. I think
Yes.
pretty much every paragraph has a heading in this edition. Sure, it
Yeah,
looks like it.
it does.
And that way it's broken up visually on the page, so that you can trace the flow of thought. And I really still would like to see, I mean, years ago, before anybody knew my name, I put out a tongue-in-cheek Bible typography manifesto. It's still up on my blog.
I signed
I think you might have signed it. Yeah.
it.
And I have found over the years more people were paying attention to it than I realized. But I still feel we need to have a much higher percentage of single column paragraphed
Yeah.
editions. And I'd like to see a lot more creativity along the lines of the Traveris.
Yes.
I'd like to see a lot more Bible editions that acknowledge, okay, we're never going to get away from verse numbers.
Mm.
I love my reader's edition. Apparently, it didn't catch on with quite as many people as I hoped. I mean, there seems to be, to me, a stable place for the reader's edition, but too many people need verses too often. I don't really need them in my print Bible very often, but if we have to have them, then let's stick them out in the margin.
Mm.
Let's find artful ways to do that so it doesn't look cluttered. And and then let's lay out the text as a single column
Yeah.
with paragraphs.
Yeah.
I'm pretty manic about this, even though I don't want to be dogmatic. Other people tell me regularly, I have a recent comment on my blog that said this. They still prefer the two columns setup. It's just what they're totally used to. I don't want to be too dogmatic against that. Uh, the number of columns isn't as important to me as the paragraphing, but the paragraphing without it, I just see too many people mistaking what they're reading. And the Bible's
Mm.
already difficult enough. Why
True.
should they have to learn another set of typographical conventions, especially when they're not really thinking about that at all? People come to the Bible in whatever format they received the Bible in as children. It seems like they get used to that and that becomes the Bible for them. And I so I'd like to change that default for the next generation. I'd like it to be single column, but at least paragraphed.
That's a very good goal. For me, it's always the wrong question. Single versus double column. You can have you can have a very long single column, which is hard to read, or you can
True.
have a double column that's very narrow, which is hard to read. I think
Right.
it's more a matter of word count, or really character count. But I always
Yeah.
like to talk about word count because it's easier to understand. And
Right.
Adobe InDesign, you can adjust the characters and you can adjust the word count and still retain the same character count.
Right.
But I still use word count because it's easier to understand. I personally like between 10 and 12 words. Um, to me, that's a good balance between prose and poetry. But it still depends on where it is on the page. I don't want it to go into the gutter so that my eye can't
Yeah.
track where I'm at and I have to use my finger to follow along the line and I don't know
Right.
where I'm reading. Um, so with that in mind, what are some Bibles that you think get it right for you for the layout design?
Yeah. I really am so interested in that Traveris. I said in my review, or I mentioned it, and I was sent one by Schuyler Bibles, which I subsequently gave away to a friend who needed a King James version. Um, I I do not like those drop caps. To me, they just scream. They're so loud and they're huge. They just don't fit. But the rest of the idea was really great. I agree. You can go too wide and you can go too narrow on those columns, and that's more important than the number of columns that you have on a page. But for me, the ideal, which Adam Lewis Green, that I know helped me understand, but other work in typography also did. My ideal is a single column. I think I read 65 or 66 characters on a line.
Yep, correct.
I want to say I got that from Robert Bringhurst and his Elements of Typography, but I'm not certain about that. Maybe I got that from Adam Lewis Green. And then I like lexicon. J. Mark Bertrand disagrees with me on this, but the first time I saw lexicon in the ESV Study Bible in my church bookstore, I just about fell over. Like, this is perfect. It's classy while still being contemporary. It's got, to me, some angular design elements like the stroke weight differences just say both classy and contemporary to me. I like the work of Klaus Eric Krogh for sure, but I love Lexicon the most. Um, my ideal, and I'm spinning off into other topics. You asked what's my ideal?
Yeah. What are some Bibles that you think get it right for
Okay.
you?
The Cambridge Clarion, it I don't particularly care to have references, and I would rather not have verse numbers in the text. I'd still rather have them in the margins. But the Cambridge Clarion just it bespeaks Cambridge to me. It's just elegant. British people are better than Americans. We all know that. They're smarter. They do better things. So I love the Cambridge Clarion. I love my ESV Reader's Bible. I love it a lot. I just was talking with a German guy who's trying to make a reader's Bible in German, and I got into his hands the TNIV Books of the Bible Project from years ago. And although I abominate the typeface, it was this weird like cross between a serif and sans serif. It kind of looked like, oh, come on, what's it called? I can see it in my head. It starts with an O. I want to say it's Olympus, but that's not right. It there's there's like these little flare outs at the end of the finials, and but they're not quite serifs. Anyway, I don't like the typeface, but a bunch of the other ideas were really good. And especially it seemed to me that they, without being gimmicky, they used the resources of modern typography and page layout to match the genre that they were in. Poetry, especially, I will never forget teaching Sunday school in an adult Sunday school at my church and asking if the people knew what parallelism was in Old Testament poetry, and they didn't. And I couldn't hide my shock and dismay that they didn't know this. Like, how can you possibly read the Old Testament and not know what parallelism is? I bet you they're better at it than they knew, but they didn't know the label. And, without knowing the label, how can they be sure they knew the thing? Well, the books of the Bible, they set off every couplet, and usually in Hebrew poetry, it's a couplet, sometimes it's a triplet. They set off every one of those with a little extra leading before and after it. And that messes up any line matching you might do through the page, but that I don't care about. I really loved having my couplets together and my triplets together. I just felt it flowed so well when reading poetry. So that's one that I really like. I like what Skylar Bibles is doing. I like what Crossway is doing. They practically never put out an ugly Bible. I like what Thomas Nelson is doing. Melinda over there at Zondervan, I like what she's doing. I mean, it's like a golden age right now. I'm really excited. People aren't putting out as many ugly Bibles. We've got a lot of good ones.
We do. We really do. Now, talking about Bible design and talking about web design, do you see a kind of a cross between the two when you're designing a website? Does it make you think of Bible typography?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think a lot of the principles are the same. I really am not that great at either one. Like, I'm going to undersell my abilities here.
You are
Um,
great at that.
I I get frustrated when I look at my own layouts, especially when it comes to type. Even though and it's precisely because I care so much, and I don't think most other people would notice where I think I fall short. But um, I, I guess I am thinking about type size and leading. I don't think about kerning because it's all done automatically for me unless I'm working on a logo. Um, I think the fonts do excellent jobs, with their own kerning engines. That's a pretty neat thing they have that's been going around a good while now. I love going to Adobe Fonts and just looking at the way the designers there design the little promo images for all the fonts. They're all so great. And I love to go to see the Webby Awards and see really good typographical design. I guess because the web is not static, you really can't carry over all of the same principles. And I think because it's comparatively cheap, pixels are cheaper than print, you can be more flexible. And so I think you can be more adventurous. And there is some really awesome design out there on the web. I think the Bible too it tends to call for something that's more classy when it comes to design and more enduring, less ephemeral and faddish. I'll never forget when the London 2012 Olympics happened, and they had this wild and crazy font that it's kind of like the reaction to the Cybertruck when it first came out. Like, do I love this with all my heart or I hate it with all my guts? I can't tell. Um, th- I don't want to see that in Bibles, but I'm cool with that on the web. So yeah, there's some universals there
Yeah.
that carry over, but there are a ton of differences too between print design
Yeah.
and web design.
The advantage in web is that you can change it.
Right.
So I'm getting the notification that I'm running out of time. Um, we have a couple of minutes left. So is there anything else that you would like to add? And also, where can our viewers get a website made by you? And what
Yeah.
kind of website would you make?
Well, let me put it this way. YouTube is an important ministry to me, an important part of my life. I've been doing weekly videos for 5 years almost now, and I don't plan to stop. I'm going to stop my work on the King James only controversy on the channel December 31st of this year. But after that, I plan to still talk about Bible translation to answer people's Bible translation questions. Possibly, I'll be talking about Logos Bible software. I the kinds of things that got people interested, I think, are still going to be on the channel, minus that particular controversy. But the flip side of that controversy is, and I am getting to your question, the flip side of that controversy is I need to now replace the bad thing that I've taken away. I've tried to take away King James onlyism. I have not taken away the King James.
Correct.
I still use it. I have it on my desk like permanently, and I use it in Logos literally every day and in my head and heart, all the time, constantly, because I've memorized tons of verses in it. But I'm trying to replace it with an understanding of why we have multiple translations, why we can trust at least the evangelical ones, what we should do practically when we see that they differ. I'm going to be talking a lot about that, Lord willing, and I need support. And what I've decided to say is, rather than getting advertising on my channel, which I'm not saying couldn't happen, maybe it would, but I would rather have people support my work by giving me work. And I would like to get more church sites and I would like to get more church website hosting. That's where my heart is. I just love to connect with pastors and churches and serve them. I've got about 100 sites now. Most of them are churches.
Nice.
And I really need to kind of triple or quadruple that if I expect to be able to feed my family and be able to do YouTube on at least a weekly basis. Basically, the more hosting clients I get, the more time I can put into YouTube. So I'm especially asking my YouTube viewers out there to help me get referrals. Go to your pastor, tell them, hey, we have to pay somebody to host this church website. Why don't we pay this guy and support his YouTube work?
That's excellent.
And
So,
you can go to forwarddesigner.net. I should have answered that question. Forwarddesigner.net to check out my portfolio for websites and for logos and my hosting pricing.
excellent. Is there anything else you'd like our readers and viewers to know before we stop?
I would love for people to get authorized the use and misuse of the King James Bible. That uh, I, I just reread that little book myself, and I was like, I'm enjoying this. Am I allowed to say that as the author? I put years of heart into that, and it's been a delight to see what the Lord has done with that little book.
Excellent. So go check out Mark's uh, YouTube channel. I'll put that in the bottom in the description. I'll put a link to your video on why Bible typography matters. I'll put a link to Forward Design. Did I say that right? Forward Design. Is that correct?
Forwarddesigner.net. Yeah,
Forward
forward
Designer.
design.
I'll put a link to that, and then I'll also put a link to the use and misuse of the King James version. And with that, we'll go ahead and close. I appreciate your time today, Mark. It's great talking to you.
Thank you so much, Brother Randy. Appreciate it.
Bye.